This is AP and DP, exclusive coverage of the ACC and the SEC. I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. My co-host, DP, Doug Parrish, former University of California defensive back extraordinaire. Hey, DP.
AP, so good to be with you. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. We're in the middle of this college football season. I guess this is the fourth week.
It is.
So here in the SEC, Doug, we have 10 games, two conference games right now. But I know you have more teams and more games, so you get us started.
All right, let's get it started. I'm going to start out with BC, who actually has a bye this week, AP. So that was easy enough. So number two I have Cal Berkeley, and they're going down to San Diego State. Now it's going to be an interesting game. A lot of fans are going. Cal is actually has the storyline of 3-0, which is going to be very important because the Aztecs are looking forward to playing one of their first undefeated opponents. Now, Cal is going down. They have a really exciting offense, AP. I think you're going to really enjoy it because they do a lot of movement on their offense, right? And Coach Harsin, he came over from Boise State. He's got them really, really plugged in and tuned in. And oh, by the way, they have one of the top quarterbacks in the country right now with the true freshman, Sangapula Telly. And he is a Polynesian quarterback, 5-star out of the islands over there. And so we're looking forward to continuing to see his growth. He's kind of playing, he's learning as he's playing, if you will. And so they're putting just enough on his plate in order for him to be successful. And then I'm looking forward to seeing the special teams game because those guys are going to have to catch the punts. And it's supposed to be like a 7-mile-per-hour wind down there. So it'd be interesting. So keep your eye out for the weather down there. The third one that I have is an interesting game as well in the ACC. These are two ACC opponents, Syracuse against Clemson. Now, they're going to be in Death Valley. It's a pivotal ACC matchup. You know, Coach Dabo Swinney has gotten a lot of flack because he wasn't buying into this whole NIL and the transfer portal. He's getting a lot of flack for it right now in week 4 because Kublik, their quarterback, he's not playing as well as they thought and projected that he would play. Now, he's not the only quarterback in the country. You know, you look at Archie Manning, he's not the only, those aren't the only players or quarterbacks that aren't playing well right now, but they're going to have to step it up and they're going to have to protect the quarterback, Klubnik, this weekend. But so on defense as well, they're going to have to really, really play well on defense in order to come out with a victory. And it's going to be important, right? Because, you know, the Tigers are 1-2 right now. You know, Syracuse is 2-1. So, you know, these games really, really matter. And then the fourth one that I have is an ACC rivalry as well. Duke will be playing against North Carolina State. So the Wolfpack are off to an impressive 3-0 start under Dave Doran, AP. So, you know, yeah. So but Duke sits at 1-2. So it should be a really interesting game. CJ Bailey, the quarterback for North Carolina State, he's a sophomore. Guess what? He's a dual threat quarterback. He can really throw the ball and he can add a little bit of toughness when he runs the ball. Jordan Waters, he's a running back from Duke. He's a veteran back that can add a spark and a plug when they need it. And so Peyton on the defense, linebacker Peyton Wilson, you know, he's the heart of the Wolfpack, you know, defense, AP. He thrives on physical play, and he's going to be running from sideline to sideline like I like it, baby. Get to the ball, you know, get to the ball and make something happen because you never know what could happen, fumble, whatever. And so Jeremiah Lewis on the other side on Duke, you know, he's the leader of the secondary. He'll be tasked with containing the passing attack from North Carolina. from Duke. So it's going to be a pretty interesting game. It's a rivalry weekend for a lot of these teams in the ACC, and I'll hand that over to you, buddy.
Yeah, first game we have on tap is Arkansas playing at Memphis. Arkansas is a 6.5-point favorite over Memphis. Memphis is 3-0. They beat Troy last week, 28-7. This series, believe it or not, Memphis leads this series 3-2. Arkansas is 2-1, 0-1 in the conference. They lost last week in a tough game against Ole Miss. The game was played in Oxford, 41-35. Arkansas with that powerful, prolific offense, 569 yards per game. Defensively, they give up 331 yards a game. Taylon Green is the quarterback, 6'5", about 230. Excellent quarterback, dual threat. But they have to play a little bit of defense, DP. It's nice to have the offense. That's necessary to have a winning program, but you have to give your offense a few more possessions, and they played Ole Miss a tough ball game, but not enough defense. Memphis, on the other hand, they're balanced with their offense, 218 yards rushing, 202 yards passing, 420 yards total offense. Defensively, they're solid at 244 yards a game. Their quarterback is Lewis. He's rushed the ball 32 times for 190 yards, 2 TDs. He's thrown and completed 55 passes, thrown 75, completed 55, 73% completion, 608 yards, couple of touchdowns. So that you can't sleep on Memphis being 3-0 and having a good offense and a pretty good defense. Second game I have for you is Southeast Louisiana out of the Southland Conference. They're 2-1, 0-0 interconference. They had they're playing LSU. The LSU leads that series 2-0. LSU, I covered that game last week. They played Florida. They're 3-0, 1-0 in the conference. Brian Kelly during the teleconference this week, he was emphasizing the offensive line is still working on their technique. They're all new players, and they're trying to be a cohesive unit because we all know the offensive line, they have to be like a chorus line. All of them have to be in step. So right now, LSU, the offense is not percolating at this point. They're a defensive-led team right now, the LSU Tigers, but they should win that game handily, give them more time to improve on the passing game, and especially the running game. They don't push people off the line of scrimmage at the point of attack. They're having some difficulties running the football, so maybe they can work on that portion of the offense as well.
Yeah. Sounds like a little bit of a strength and conditioning, as well as maybe doing some pulling and getting some big tackles and guards pulling to get some blocks for those running backs. AP.
Right.
My next game is Florida State. You remember those guys last year? They were projected to be really high, and they just tumbled. And so this year they are 2-0, and they're playing at home against Kent State, who is 1-2. Now, Florida State has rebounded so significantly that they are number 7 in the country.
Number 7.
In week 4. And behind Tommy Castellanos.
Castellanos, here we are.
For me to say, these quarterbacks, and they're coming out with these multiple syllable last names is really interesting, and it's so much fun for me to try to continue to say their names over and over again. But I'm sure since they're such dynamic quarterbacks, we're going to be talking about them throughout the season and hopefully at the next level in the NFL. But he's looking sharp. He's looking healthy. He's already put up some impressive numbers, Castellanos. And he's 17 for 25 AP. He has 389 yards and 3 touchdowns. So while showing ability to extend plays with his legs, and that's really impressive as well. So it's been a remarkable turnaround, as I mentioned, for Mike Norvell, who has lifted the program, from the struggles of last year. And so this week they face Kent State Golden Flashes. Okay, a program that is challenged, has had their challenges. They're one of the weakest teams in the FBS, but any team can be beat on any given Saturday, as we know. But they're favored by 43 points. It'd be a miracle for them to win that game, but you never know. You just never know. And so definitely one of those games where you're looking at the quarterback to be like a tune-up game for them. And yep, Georgia Tech is at home this week. They're going against Temple. Now, Georgia Tech is getting fancy, AP. They got some new uniforms coming out, new helmets and everything. They're going to be looking the all white out, man, this Saturday. They're ranked number 18 in the country. They're going to be coming out in style. They're viewing their new uniforms. Brent Ray's squad is buzzing with momentum after the dramatic win over Clemson. Aiden Burr's booming. That 55-yard field goal he kicked at the end of the game.
Game winner.
Yeah. So quarterback Haynes King has returned from injury as well, throwing for 216 yards. So, they're getting the pieces back together at the right time. The keys for victory is the fundamentals. Defensively, Georgia Tech, they got to keep their eyes in the right position. If they're in zone, they got to be in zone, and DB's got to drop back, and I can go on and on about that. But on the offense, in the trenches, the pad level needs to be low, and they need to execute critical and sustain in critical situations and sustain their drives to neutralize the Owls' defensive schemes. So, I'm looking forward to a good game between Georgia Tech, who's 3-0. As I mentioned, I think they're one of the few undefeated teams in the ACC. And, so I turn that back over to you, buddy.
Yeah, we have a big ball game within the region. Tulane, the American Conference, 3-0. They're coming off a victory over the Duke Blue Devils in New Orleans, 34-27. The series versus Ole Miss. They'll be playing the game in Oxford. Ole Miss leads that series 44-28. Tulane was in the SEC up until the mid-'60s. So that explains why they played so many games within the series, 44-28. So Ole Miss defeated Arkansas, as we said before, 41-35. Ole Miss's offense is running the ball 211 yards, passing for 330. The offense 541 yards, doing fine on that side of the ball defensively, 381. The rushing defense is not good at this point, 194 yards per game. Passing defense is fine, 187 yards. Tulane's offense is plus 400 yards, 417 yards, 222 running the ball. So the Tulane running attack versus the Ole Miss defensive rush allows 194 yards. So that's a matchup that you have to watch closely. If Tulane can run the football, you can neutralize the powerful Ole Miss offense, keep them on the sidelines. Defensively, Tulane's giving up 370 yards, 135 yards on the ground, 235 yards through the air. So, Ole Miss is going to try to throw that ball against Tulane's secondary, allowing that 235 yards a game. So, Ole Miss about a 10, 11-point favorite. They should win this game. They're sitting at number 13 in the Football Writers Association of America.
Wow.
Excuse me, American National Football Foundation Super 16 poll. You have Jake Retzlaff for Tulane. He transferred from BYU.
Okay.
59% threw for over 500 yards. He's 46 for 78. Ran for almost 300 yards in 3 games. They're 3-0, 288 yards, 6 TDs there. So he's accounted for 8 touchdowns. The key for Ole Miss, there's a possibility that Trinidad Chambliss, and you're saying, what? Trinidad Chambliss, who is that? He's a Division II championship quarterback that transferred from Ferris State in Michigan to Ole Miss. The starting quarterback, Austin Simmons, was injured. He played a little bit last week, but Trinidad Chambliss came off the bench for over 400 plus yards total offense. He was sensational.
Wow.
So watch out for Trinidad Chambliss. Again, spoke to Lane Kiffin this week, and he found him. He has his people looking at film from all over the country. He liked what he saw and invited him down and offered him a scholarship. And that turned out to be one of his best decisions in the portal.
There you go.
Have him. But I think Ole Miss will take care of business. Like I said, about 10, 11-point favorite. Moving on to the next game, South Carolina versus Missouri. That's the 2 Columbias. Columbia, South Carolina, Columbia, Missouri. They're playing in Como. That's in Missouri. Missouri's a 13.5-point favorite. The series stands 8 games for Missouri, 6 games for South Carolina. South Carolina 2-1, 0-1. The conference came off a devastating loss at home to Vanderbilt, 31-7. We know that Vanderbilt, we'll discuss them a little bit with Diego Pavia and company. They're confident. And Lenore Sellers got hurt in the first half. They're fine sophomore quarterback. So they struggled offensively. Their offense this year, only 300 yards a game. Defensively, 300 yards, which is very good. But 300 yards of offense, probably not enough. The offense from Missouri, nearly 600 yards, 587. The defense is only 200 yards right now, which is outstanding. 300 yards running, 284 passing, very balanced at this point for Mizzou. They beat Louisiana Lafayette 52-10, so they're 3-0 undefeated. So Lenore Sellers right now, he's questionable. Could be Luke Doty. He's the wide receiver quarterback. Might be the starter for South Carolina. So they're at a real disadvantage right now. They're down with that loss, that double-digit 3-touchdown loss plus to Vanderbilt. So Missouri's quarterback, Bo Pribula, having an outstanding season, 76%, 68 for 89, 1 interception, 7 TDs. Ahmad Henry, DP, 5 touchdowns, 462 yards, 8 yards a carry. So I think Missouri's in the best position to win this game, not only because they're home, but they're playing better and they have their starting quarterback healthy.
Yeah, it's important to have a good starting quarterback. I'm telling you. So the next up for me, AP, in week 4 is Louisville. Now, Louisville Cardinals versus the Bowling Green Falcons. Louisville is going to be playing at home, AP, this weekend against Bowling Green, who's 2-1. Louisville is undefeated. They had a bye last week. Jeff Brom's team, they want to keep their college football playoff hopes alive by defeating the Bowling Green Falcons. So they had wins over Eastern Kentucky, James Madison, and they're just looking to continue with Miller Moss, who has thrown for 372 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. Louisville looks to need to protect the football. Again, they need to make the right reads. And then especially under pressure, they need to protect the football. Isaac Brown has been a bright spot for them, AP. He has 2 straight 100-yard games to begin the season. So that's pretty impressive for a running back. He showed explosiveness, and he's also has a long touchdown burst that sealed the victory when they played against JMU, James Madison. On the other side of Bowling Green, Drew Pine, he's a graduate, junior, and transfer with prior stops at Notre Dame, Arizona State, and the team you just talked about, Missouri. He settled into the spread offense that they run down there. And so he's thrown for over 500 yards. And so he's a pretty good quarterback. So it's going to be a battle. Again, Louisville is still riding high on these playoff aspirations. So we're looking forward to continuing that. The next one that I have, AP, is Miami Hurricanes against the Florida Gators. Miami is at home this weekend, AP. Guess what their record is? 3-0.
3-0, right?
3-0. Here's another one. Now, I would say that Florida Gators, they're 1-2, but I don't know if their record is an indicative of their talent on their team. Because you went to see one of their games too, right?
I was there last week. I'll just tell you, the quarterback, DJ Lagway, threw 5 interceptions, and he did not look comfortable in the pocket. And I mentioned on my show that the coaching staff left a lot to be desired. Every time LSU was blitzing up the middle, you're looking for that hot route across the slot receiver that one of your fastest players are. They're running across and making the defensive back chase them. But they had receivers running the fly patterns on the left and the right side. That's too long of a pattern. You need something very quickly in the 5 to 10 yard range where the quarterback can release the ball in a timely manner and make those defensive backs chase them across the field, which is a very difficult pattern,
Yeah,
Doug, it's very difficult to guard.
absolutely. It's
So
very.
I don't think they gave him a good chance to
Mm,
succeed. And he ended up throwing the 5 interceptions, and they lost to LSU on the road.
mhm.
So I'd like to see something better from the coaches. We understand the quarterback's out there playing the game, and he must perform. But
Right.
I think the coaches have that responsibility to put players in position
Oh,
to
that's
be
absolutely that's their
successful.
job. That's exactly their job. Now,
Yeah.
at Miami, they're ranked number 4, and you might be familiar with this guy's name, Carson Beck. He was at Georgia, right?
At
So
Georgia, the Georgia transfer, correct.
that's right. He's completed already this season 65 passes out of 83, and he's off to a scorching start. Mario Cristobal looks to have his team ready, fired up. Miami's ranked 44th nationally AP in total defense,
Well,
and
defense.
yeah, and they're really the heart of it is Ruben Bain. He's disruptive. He's a disruptor. He's a disruptive edge rusher. So, he's been wreaking havoc on QBs. He's got 10 tackles, 7 pressures, and forced several fumbles already. So look out for him. All right, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we have UAB.
Oh yeah.
UAB, that's University of Alabama, Birmingham from the American Conference. They're 2-1, 0-1 in their conference. They beat Akron 31-28. They're playing the University of Tennessee. Tennessee, number 15th ranked. Tennessee's about a 40-point favorite. This
Sure.
series is in favor of the Volunteers, 5-zip. Tennessee coming off the overtime loss to University of Georgia. That game was played in Knoxville, 44-41. Plenty of offense with Joey Aguilar and company. I thought that was the right decision to bring him on board, and I projected that he would be an improvement in the quarterback's position from last year, and he is, I think, right at this point. Their offense, 568 yards, defensively 365. They have to play some better defense. Maybe they can get started by playing against UAB. UAB is a team, offense 451 yards. Defensively, they give up 472. So I think Tennessee will, as you stated, these are tune-up games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you shouldn't be distracted because you're trying to get better, especially on the defensive side. Offensively, under Josh Heupel, I think they're going to be doing very well this season with Joey Aguilar at the helm. The next game I have is Georgia State at Vandy. You're thinking, well, Vanderbilt's a 26-point favorite. Well, last year, Doug, when Vandy was riding high, they overlooked Georgia State and they lost down in Atlanta. So this game is at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's 3-0, 1-0 in the conference. The series lead 1-0 Georgia State. Georgia State's 1-2, 0-0, and they're from the Sun Belt Conference. Offensively, they're 367 yards. Georgia State. Offensively, Vanderbilt's 431 yards. They're passing for 228 yards a game, running the ball quite nicely as well with 200 yards. So, and they're defensively 237 yards, playing outstanding defense. Vandy with Diego Pavia at the helm, the quarterback, they should win this game. They're not going to forget last year where Georgia State upset them. It could have been another game, and it was a highly successful comeback season for the Vanderbilt Commodores. So look for Vandy to defeat Georgia State in Nashville with a rowdy crowd on hand, I think.
Gotcha. Looking forward to that one, AP. Well, the next game, the headlines have been just dominated by the head coach. And that guy is none other than Bill Belichick, who leads the North Carolina Tar Heels against UCSF Knights. So the legendary coach is going to be looking for a dogfight between these two because these guys, man, he's coming off a high right now. And one of the important things about college football players is like when you're riding high, you got to be careful because you can't get too high. Like Bill Belichick always says, do your job. Okay. Yeah, he says all of those cliche things. But UCSF is riding high after dismantling North Carolina A&T 68-7. That sounds like a basketball game blowout, right?
Right. Yeah, Scott Frost, right?
Yeah. So they got a bye week, and then they got some rest, and then they're able to reset. So they're going to welcome Belichick to the bounce house with plenty of swagger. And for UNC, the keys lie in the defense. Bill Belichick may draw up some schemes, but always defense wins championship. And that means slowing down the dual threat quarterback, Ja'Cory Brown, who racked up 125 yards rushing on just 5 carries last time out, keeping the tabs on UCF's balanced ground, led by Gio Lopez and also Demond June. So the Tar Heels must stay focused and keep their eyes in the right place again and prevent explosive plays from flipping the momentum. So that's going to be a pretty interesting game. I'm looking forward to seeing how Belichick has his team to be balanced after wins. So that's pretty interesting. And then this next one that I have, AP, at Pitt, it was Pitt, and they have a bye this week. So I'll let you jump on in right there.
Yeah, I just got the one game. I'll finish up with the two after you present the ACC games. But this is a huge game for all the Auburn Tigers and the Oklahoma Sooners. Auburn travels to Norman, Oklahoma. Oklahoma leads this series 3-0. Auburn has the former Oklahoma quarterback that transferred to the Plains, Jackson Arnold, returning to Norman, Oklahoma. Auburn is playing, they're 3-0, 242 yards rushing, 173 yards passing, 415 yards of offense. The defense is playing fairly well at 287 yards, but they're giving up 220 yards in the secondary. So I think that Oklahoma, with their highly successful transfer quarterback, John Mateer from Washington State, they're going to test that secondary. So this game boils down to, I think, John Mateer, the quarterback of Oklahoma, challenging the Auburn secondary, and then also the transfer from Oklahoma at Auburn, Jackson Arnold. How well does he play in Norman? He's back to where he started as a freshman. And will he try to just rely on his teammates? Don't go above and beyond your responsibility, because that happens sometime, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So stay within your game plan. And Oklahoma's a 6.5-point favorite. They're coming off a 42-3 win against Temple. And Auburn's coming off a 31-15 win over the University of South Alabama. So their tackling in space is going to be tested in this ball game. And OU has a fairly dominant defense at this point. They had a lot of nice portal transfers with John Mateer and Jaden Ott. You know about Jaden Ott. He hasn't been healthy. And hasn't produced very much, but they have a good running attack, even without Jaden Ott, 156 yards per ball game. But I think Oklahoma has the edge because they're playing at home. John Mateer, he's a slightly better quarterback, I think, right now. But Jackson Arnold, this has to be a game that he circled 3 times on the schedule to go back to Oklahoma and play against his former team.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that happening subconsciously, definitely, right? I have a bye here for Wake Forest, AP, so I'm going to just put that one on the side. The TCU is playing, are playing SMU. And so TCU is 2-0. SMU is 2-1. It's going to be the battle, what they call the battle of the iron skillet, AP. And so that's going to be a very interesting game. The coaches, Sonny Dykes and, Brett Lashley, they're both dynamic coaches. So they're going to have their teams ready to fire it up. But one of the things that has changed between these two, and you'll appreciate this, is that they've been playing each other for like over 103 years. But they didn't re-sign to play each other again, which is quite interesting. And but Josh Hoover from TCU, Hoover was originally recruited by Dykes when he was at SMU. So now it's a full circle moment for these guys. You talk about going back, a quarterback going back home to where he originally was. But Josh Hoover, his poise, he plays big time, like he has big time potential, AP. So he needs to definitely be fired up against the Mustangs defense. And as you know, we talked about Kevin Jennings. He led the team to the ACC championship against Clemson last year. Homegrown product, steadily developing. And so the SMU fans have long hoped for him to be successful. So hopefully he can contribute. As we know, Eric Dickerson, Craig James, those guys played at SMU back in the day. So they're going to be on hand, rooting their team on. And TCU is going to be fired up and ready to go, but because they're coming in and trying to dominate the Big 12 and get them a chance to be in the playoffs. The second game I have is Virginia Cavaliers against Stanford. Now, Stanford is going last week, BC went to Stanford. Now, Stanford is going back across the country to Virginia. So that's going to be an interesting game. That's going to be an evening game as well. But, as we know, Frank Wright and Andrew Luck, those two putting their heads together to try to, formulate a really good team out there in Stanford. Tony Elliott is continuing to mold Virginia's identity as the head coach too. And both of these teams, have some interesting storylines. Elliott brings the discipline and the balance to the Cavaliers. Frank Wright, former NFL coach, so we'll see how Andrew Luck's legacy is going to pan out with the team. They had a win last week, which was great. The next game and the final game that I have, AP, is Virginia Tech versus Wofford. And that's Wofford. I'm sure you're familiar with them. Unfortunately, they're 0-3 this season, and Virginia Tech is 0-3 as well. So Virginia Tech is at home. Hopefully they have an advantage. But one of the key storylines is so it's kind of interesting. We talk about these players, we talk about these games, and the conferences as well. But it's interesting when you have two 0-3 teams, the storyline is not the players or anything like that. It really is like the stadium. So Virginia Tech has a very nice stadium and very supportive fans. They have approximately about 65,000 seats in that stadium. Michael Vick is and another player, Shane Beamer, who you may be familiar with. They're both names are circulating around to be the next head coach for Virginia Tech. So that's the storyline there on two 0-3 teams. And that's all I have for you this week, AP, coming from the ACC, exclusive coverage. I really appreciate hearing all the good news that you have coming down the pipe from the SEC, sir.
Oh, yeah, here we are. To finish up, just to let you know, the byes, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Texas A&M. The last two games we have is Northern Illinois University out of the MAC. They're 1-1, 0-0 in the conference versus Mississippi State. They're a 21-point favorite, 21.5-point favorite. Mississippi State doing quite well offensively. Jeff Lebby, Blake Shapen is the quarterback, 441 yards of offense. Defensively, 263 yards per game. That is a significant improvement from last year. So I look for Mississippi State to win this game against Northern Illinois, but don't sleep on any MAC teams. They're always usually competitive when they play out of conference. Moving on to the last game, we have Sam Houston State out of Conference USA, 0-3, 0-1 in the conference. But just backtrack 1 second. Northern Illinois, Mississippi State, that's going to be the first meeting all time between those two programs. Sam Houston State playing Texas. Texas leads the series 1-0. Texas 2-1, 41-point favorite. They're just looking to improve their passing game with Arch Manning. Right. He's not been sharp. He missed a lot of throws. So they have a lot of catch up, and pun intended, to do in the passing game. So that's it for the SEC. 10 games, 2 games within the conference. And I guess we'll be back next week for another episode of AP and DP, exclusive coverage of the ACC SEC. So we'll see you along the way, DP.
Thank you so very much, AP. Look forward to it. Enjoy the games.